Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Denise Lee. She is an executive life coach and she guides leaders through transformative growth and decision making. She is also a podcast host, has over a decade of experience dedicated to helping her clients live fully present and purpose driven life both in and out of the boardroom. Welcome to the show, Denise.
Thank you, AJ, for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about overcoming trauma for business success. In this backdrop, we'll have our conversation, Dennis. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey so that people know who they are listening to and also learn from your journey itself.
Yeah, thank you, AJ, for bringing that up because I think a lot of people hear people say, oh, I'm an expert, but how does that even connect? Because I think truly, if we understand the purpose, we can find that they're not only credible, right? That we can believe that they have a path that is worth walking alongside. So that being said, my name is Denise Lee, and I always want on the surface to say I am a business owner, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, but I'm also a incest survivor. I'm a rape survivor. I am a recovering addict. I've been through hell and back. And the reason why I specialize in addictions and trauma is because they're two peas in the pod. When someone has experienced something overwhelming, exhausting, beyond comprehension, they resort to drinking, alcohol, gambling, all sorts of things in order to numb and anesthetize themselves from the pain they experience. And so what I do is help guide people through the grieving and the healing process so that they can live a better and healthier life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And everyone would want to understand means how the question is about how. How do you do this? How to transform past traumas into powerful business assets. How do you do that? Because these are business leaders, they do things for others, but they are not able to do these things for themselves. So how does one first identify these traumas and how do they then consider or make them their powerful business assets? Help us a bit from the ground level, Dennis.
Okay, so in order to answer your question, AJ, I just want to explain to the audience that we need to define what a trauma is. And everyone thinks trauma is sexual abuse, physical violence, verbal abuse, right? But there's a lot of other things that can be. It could be overworking. It could be overextended. It could be a lot of little things that pile up. I'm thinking about one particular client I work with who had experienced financial trauma for decades. He always had more a month at the end, but not enough money. He always found himself scrounging and doing deals that were completely inauthentic for him because he was literally bereft financially. And that led him feeling a constant anxiety, a sense of discouragement. So the first thing we have to do is identify what that is. And it's not just because you had a bad day or a bad week. It's literally something that happened continuously that was ongoing stress. That's a trauma, or it could be something huge, calamitous. Obviously, and financial trauma is one form. It could be emotional trauma. I'm thinking about one particular client of mine, another one who had her business manager embezzle almost $90,000 from her business trust. That was from other clients. That was traumatic. And so for a lot of us, we don't want to label it as trauma because we think we should have been smarter enough. We should have seen the signs coming. We should have protected ourselves. But sometimes it was beyond our control or even understanding. So once we identify it, the second thing is to see how it's impacting our life. I kind of mentioned earlier, it could be anxiety, it could be insomnia, overeating, undereating, being verbally abusive toward other people, feeling disconnected, disassociation. That's just one of many little signs: paranoia, suspicion. So identify. It is just as important. This is the second step as just for, and then the last thing is forgiving yourself. You can't move towards healing unless you decide for yourself that you are worth healing. A lot of trauma survivors believe that somehow they don't deserve the healing. The reason they were punished because they didn't know or they didn't understand. But the fact of the matter is, it was something that happened to them. And let me just say, AJ, one more thing is that 90% of us at one point or a time will experience a form of trauma. It doesn't have to be the same as I've experienced or you've experienced it or anyone else has experienced. And so understanding we constantly need to check in and heal within ourselves. It's just something that is par for the course of life.
Right, Denise. So, first, how does this trauma impact a business owner's ability to make decisions? Because they have this trauma for whatever period they have been having, and they have come to this point. Haven't they learned to deal with that trauma earlier on through their different stages in life? Why does it have to impact, especially when you are a business leader or a business owner? Help us understand, and then how they have learned or not learned, and how does it impact that at the present situation that they are in?
I want to mention some, that's a great question, AJ. I want to mention some recent pop star news. So we're having this conversation September 17th, maybe September 18th for some of you guys who are listening, depending on your time zone. And anyway, as of September 16th, Sean Puff Daddy Combs was arrested. This was after a warrant was put. This was, and even months earlier, he had federal officials, U.S. federal officials, go and raid through one of his homes. And this is accumulation of accusations of physical assault, underhanded business deals. And the reason why I'm mentioning his name is because he, in my personal opinion, he's showing signs of a trauma survivor who is not surviving. What happens with people who don't get healing from survivors is they tend to become the perpetrator themselves. They move from victim to perpetrator. And it was interesting to learn more about his upbringing. He had an extremely violent childhood situation. I believe he witnessed gun violence. He had severe verbal, emotional, physical abuse as a child. So what we're seeing is the accumulation of what happens to somebody who doesn't get healed. And one more connection about that is another Pop-Tart news is Jennifer Lopez. Within last month, she announced that she was divorcing, her fourth divorce with Ben Affleck, the Bennifer couple, and after 2 years of marriage. And it was very interesting because she's always talked about being addicted to love, being addicted to romance. And even though she said she received help, she never really received help. The fact that it was very clear that she was manically pursuing more fame, more fortune, more exposure to her relationship, even though it was against the wishes of her husband. And so what happens again in that situation is when you're not dealing with your trauma, you're repeating it and recycling and actually manifesting the same thing that you don't want to have seen. And I know I'm mentioning these really bad situations because honestly, we don't see a lot of the good. We never really see a lot of people who have experienced something traumatic in public. And they say, well, I've gone to therapy. Usually you see it kind of spill out in other ways in their personal and their business lives. But for me, when I see someone who's actually dealt with their trauma, it's not so much that it's a big show. They're showing everybody, oh, I was an alcoholic, now I'm better. But they're actually living a life. One example that comes to my mind is Russell Brand, the comedian. For anyone who doesn't know about Russell Brand, the comedian, he's dealt with I think heroin, cocaine, multiple addictions, substance abuse addiction for almost 20 years before he got sober. Now he's very open and vocal about his addiction issues. He talks about his spiritual and actually, I think he became a Christian recently. Doesn't matter if you want to become a Christian or not. The point is he was finding ways to help find a sense of grounding, a sense of healing, a sense of purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dennis. Now, let's understand the role of mindset here. Business owners, entrepreneurs, all these achievers, they tend to have a different type of mindset, resilient mindset, someone who is ready to take uh, onto their vision, to take on the world. Why is it that they have a mindset for success, but till now they are not able to have developed that mindset to deal with this trauma? Help us understand then, how do you add to that already existing mindset for success that can remove trauma and help them move forward? Help us. This sounds like a almost like two different things, because it's like you are a strong man and some person, skinny person, beats you up.
Yeah, AJ, that's a really good question. And I think it's really baffling. You know, you've heard about people like the Wolf of Wall Street, for example. He was able to score multi-millions of dollars for his clients, and then he would go home and snort a line of cocaine alongside prostitutes. And you were like, how is he winning on Wall Street and losing in his personal life, right? And that's why, again, I mentioned addictions, because for a lot of high achieving type A personalities, they have learned to dissociate. And when I mean about dissociate, I mean literally you're splitting your work persona away from your personal persona. There's a chasm. I remember when I was in the early days of my addiction recovery, AJ, and I remember telling my sponsor at the time, do I have to tell everyone about my life? Because I literally put on, AJ, like different hats. I'm addict, Denise. I'm running and cruising around the streets, getting drunk and doing other things. And then I take that hat off, and then I'm project manager, Denise. Let's talk about deadlines. And it's so very easy to do that if you're in full of shame and guilt and self-pity, to create that chasm between those two worlds.
Right, Dennis. Let's bring self-care here. Now, business leaders, while they are climbing this ladder of success, they are smart enough to know how to be productive, how to move towards a goal, and also perhaps to take care of themselves. Because without any sort of self-care, you cannot just keep on running. Even as anyone else may just dwindle, but these guys obviously are human, so they do it. What is it that, in terms of trauma, they again are not able to take care of something that we call is their own care, and trauma comes in and suddenly jumps onto them and cripple their business decision making? Help us understand then, what is it that you'd want them to do if they are suffering? Somebody is starting to get into this fast lane of success, has trauma, but is ignoring. What would you like to do, like them to do in terms of self-care, so that it does not come and attack them in the future when they are very close to success?
Ooh, oh, that's a really loaded question, because I want to really parse my words in a way that it's sensitive, but just matter of the fact. I want to be matter of fact. When you're traumatized, AJ, we say colloquially, like, there's something wrong with you, something's off. And it really is something off. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. It's basically, everyone hears of this phrase of flight, fight. Like, you know, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you might want to run away, or you might kind of cover, one of those things, right? And what happens when you're traumatized, that amygdala, that also short circuits your impulse control, meaning that the things that your brain will say, no, that's not a good idea. Your brain's like, hey, let's do it. It's fun. Let's go. And so it might seem exciting, right? At first, right? But then you're getting hooked on the drama and the chaos. So for a lot of business owners who are used to drama, they might literally addicted to it. And so in order to heal, is to actually recognize, what are you gaining from your confusion? A lot of people don't think about that. They just think that, it's causing me problems with my wife or my business partner. But some people like the makeup sex. Some people like that they're always being creative, jumping from one deal to the next. Catch me if you can. So in order for us to really heal from all of that, we're going to have to see, okay, I know that I'm gaining these things, but the cons are really high. It's not worth it. Can we find our fun and healthy ways while confronting the things that are scary? Because we can still have fun, right? But not at the expense of our wallet or in our relationships.
Right. Not at the expense of our wallet as well as our relationship. So, in terms of then, when we are talking of self-care, when we are talking of achieving business goals and dreams, how do business owners who can get sometimes carried on by unhealthy addiction to work, how do they distinguish between healthy ambition and unhealthy addiction to work and focus more on life itself?
Remember when we were in school? I had this experience. Maybe you can agree. When you're in school and your mother or your father said, "Why are you hanging around those kids? They're no good. They're not good. You need to be with those kids." And I'm going to say the exact same thing to you guys who are listening. Who are you hanging around? Do you want to hang around people who are all about mischief and chaos on the corporate level? Because it's no really different than when we were kids. It's just that the games have changed. Instead of wanting to spray graffiti on the wall, we're seeing how much we can take from a client. It's the same games. And so for a lot of us who have either overactive or underactive nervous system, we may not even be realizing what's happening around it because chaos, confusion may be normalized to us. So what I would urge to some of you guys who are listening, I really want you to actually start writing stuff down. Take a journal for the week and just start writing down things that you've done for the week. And then ask and do a plus, meaning that it was healthy, or a minus. Like literally grade yourself. Don't put any spin to it and say, well, it wasn't me. It was when blah, blah. Don't rationalize all of it. Grade it throughout the week and say, okay, I get drunk a lot on Fridays. My wife screams on me on Wednesdays, but maybe something's wrong. Because for a lot of us, who have been accustomed to that kind of lifestyle, we've been doing it for years, if not decades. It's like Monday, get drunk. Tuesday, steal money. Wednesday, overwork. And we're just so used to it.
Right, Denise. Right. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all days you have a plan. Like business owners can always have a plan. And trauma walks either with them or behind them. So business owners, how do they heal themselves and thrive? Can they do this while running on the fast lane, or they first should stop, get themselves healed, and then look towards thriving? Or can they do it learning on the job? Can trauma be something, healing trauma is like learning on the job?
Yeah, you're right. It is. AJ, it could be both ways. I personally couldn't done it. I personally had to quit the job that I was working on and do intensive work for me. But it depends on the scope, the size, the details around your trauma. I would hate to say a one size fits all. I've met a lot of people who think that, well, maybe I can just go to therapy, outpatient. Other people have benefited going to inpatient therapy. I think it all really depends on what they want to achieve and how devastating their addiction or the trauma is impacting other people. But I will say, though, that for people who have experienced extremely high level of stress or low period of time, you're not working optimally. You're just barely scraping by. And you're not really seeing the growth you want in terms of your business, your relationships with your coworkers, clients, your visibility. Because for a lot of people who have been traumatized, they're afraid of speaking. They're afraid of doing public events. They're afraid of marketing themselves because they think they're a fraud. They feel like they're a fraud because they didn't feel safe because of their traumatic incidents. So to think that you can get away from that is folly. It's not happening. So I think for those, to really answer your question, AJ, I think it all really depends about what happened to you in order to fix and heal you.
Absolutely. There is much to learn from you, Denise, and I'm sure a lot of this is just one podcast episode for the audience to learn from, but you are the host of a podcast of your own, and that will help introverted entrepreneur. So tell us a bit about your podcast so that people can learn many episodes from your podcast itself.
Oh, thank you, AJ, for mentioning that. So the Introverted Entrepreneur podcast is mostly me talking, but I also feature wonderful guests like AJ himself and other really industry leaders talking not just about traumas and addictions, about mental health, wellness, understanding who you are, communication. For a lot of us who have experienced adverse situations, we don't know how to talk with ourselves or one another. And we get what we want when we know what's going on within inside of ourselves. So a lot of conversations about getting to know you, self-care, obviously, being authentic, and communicating with confidence.
Communicate with confidence. As I said, there is so much to learn from you, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to connect and learn from you, learn more about you, and also get your coaching and run on the fast lane of life, thrive without any trauma. So what is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, thank you, AJ, for mentioning. The best place to find me is literally my website, deniseglee.com. There they can learn about my story, obviously access my podcast, read I've written over 100 articles on addictions, trauma, sexual abuse, infidelities, all sorts of fun stuff that nobody likes talking about out loud. And then also I'm going to be featuring interviews with obviously this conversation because I've been enjoying it so much. And it's just a great place for people to also inquire about working with me if that's something they desire.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ.